Welcome to the Brazilian BA guest. Today I have the honor to have a very special author of several books regarding to requirements and business analysis. This guy is Karl Wiegers. Welcome, Karl.
Thanks, Fabricio. It's very nice to be here.
It's a great honor for me to have you here, Karl.
Thank you.
I do have a special question for you today.
Okay.
The question is, are there some universal principles of good product design?
That's a very important question. And the short answer is yes. I believe there are. And as you know, I've done a lot of work in requirements, which generally should come before design and feed into the design. And I'm a consumer of all sorts of products, as we all are, consumer of software applications, websites. I drive cars. I buy products for my house, both physical products and software products that we all encounter. And I've noticed over the years, and probably you and many other people have too, that some of them are very annoying. They're designed in a way that you just wonder, has the designer ever used a product like this before? They must not have, or they wouldn't have made some of these choices. So I started thinking about this, and I came up with many examples. I've got over 200 examples of products that I've been thinking about and other people have shared with me. Some of them are very well designed, and many of them are what I call thoughtlessly designed. And I define a thoughtlessly designed product as one that does violate one of or more of several principles of good design that I think are universal. And so as I was studying these various products and trying to figure out, well, what is it about the design that I find annoying? I started seeing some patterns. And one of the things that I found from these patterns is that I came up with 9 principles that I think are universal. One of them, they seem so obvious, as we think about it. Should you even have to have a principle that says, make the product easy and obvious to use? Should we have to write that down? I don't think so, but I'll bet, have you ever used a product that you said, this is not obvious to me, it's not intuitive? I'm sure you've encountered products like that, right?
For sure I did. Sometimes I believe that people make products thinking in their perspective of creating the product. So what is easier for them to create or to fabricate or to make, and not for the user to use. Maybe that's the point that should change the mind, right?
Exactly. In fact, you are touching on what I think is one of the most important principles. So I came up with these 9 principles, but I also, as I started thinking about all these things and say, I didn't just complain about the products. I tried to figure out what could we learn from the products. And I extracted from all these different products that I'm talking about 70 lessons about design. Wow. And the very first lesson touches on what you're talking about right now, which is to focus design on usage, not on the product's features. And we know that from software too, right? From being a business analyst and being a requirements person like you are, and I've done a lot in that area. I think we've learned that the best way to explore requirements is not to ask people what they want or what their requirements are. Those are terrible questions to ask during a requirements exploration. But let's talk about what people need to do with the product. So I think one of the best ways to improve designs is to focus on usage, not on features or what's easy to make.
And that's really interesting because actually there's a lot of movement changing the focus from projects to products. And so there are a lot of people working as product owners are organizing a backlog of items that a product must have, and usually they are focusing on features.
Yep.
That's so you call the attention for something that's maybe happening with a lot of teams that is focusing on features more than on the usage on the user side of the product.
And I think that's one reason why I've always liked use cases in requirements discussions. I'm a big fan of use cases because they start by talking about, let's talk about a scenario of what you're going to interact with the product to try to accomplish. And from that, we'll figure out what characteristics and capabilities the product has to have. And I think that goes a long way toward designing to make products easy and obvious to use. Another thing that does is aligned with one of my other principles, which is to consider realistic usage scenarios. And I'll give you a great example. Last year, I bought a new wall oven for my kitchen. And one of the features you want in an oven is an alarm, a timer, so that you can set the timer for 10 minutes to take your cookies out of the oven. Well, my oven has an alarm, has a timer, and that's just kind of a nominal feature, right? Just building in a timer. A thoughtful feature that they added to it, which is to let the user set the volume to one of 3 settings. Well, that's thoughtful and considerate. But even on the loudest setting for the alarm, you can barely hear it.
Oh.
And over just the normal background noise of your kitchen or your house or your dining room, it's very easy to miss that the alarm's going off. It sounds like the tinkling of an ice cream truck. It's like, what is there a sound? Oh, yes, my cookies are done. So that's completely thoughtless. So I think they didn't really consider the realistic usage scenario. So it's not enough just to consider the tasks. You have to consider the environment as a way to understand not only how, but where people are going to use the product. And that's another, I think, very universal design principle that people should keep in mind.
Interesting. We can extrapolate it for other areas. Like when people are using an application on their phone, they're not at the lab with nobody around, but maybe they're at the street, in the supermarket, trying to figure out what they have to buy, and that's a really different scenario. Something that would work in one scenario would not work in another one. Interesting.
In fact, you touched on my third principle. It's like you walked right into my trap here, which is to consider a wide range of usage environments. So not only what task are you trying to do, not only what are some realistic scenarios, but where are you going to do them? And something that looks great in an office, you might not even be able to read the screen when you get outdoors and have glare on it from the sun. So I think you need to think about the usage environments as well. So what happens when people violate those design principles? One of the things that happens is users end up making mistakes. And I don't know about you, but if I'm trying to use something, even if it's a website, and I keep making mistakes because of the way it's designed, I get annoyed. It wastes my time. It can make you feel silly. It can make you feel dumb if you can't figure out how to use a product. And it's probably not your fault that you can't figure out how to use it. It's probably a design problem, because I think a lot of times products aren't designed in a way to let's make it impossible for users to make a mistake if we can. If we can't make it impossible, let's at least make it hard. And even if they do make a mistake, let's make it easy for them to recover from the mistake. So I think that's another critical design principle.
Oh, interesting. And I like what you say, that as a user, you got annoyed when you see a bad design. But as someone who is working on the product development, any kind of product, you transformed that annoying into knowledge. So what can I learn from that? And I think that's a very good idea for everyone who's watching us right now and who works on product development, to change this mindset. But you had already done some very good work compiling those ideas into 70 lessons, you said?
Yes.
9 principles. Where can people find those that knowledge that you compiled?
Well, the place this is all collected is a book I published earlier this year. It was released in February of 2021. And the book is called The Thoughtless Design of Everyday Things. And the title there is a little bit of a play on words, because there was a classic book published by Donald Norman, first in 1988, called The Design of Everyday Things. And that's one of the best known books about product design. And he touches on some of these kinds of problems, but I took it to the next step and made that really the theme of my book, The Thoughtless Design of Everyday Things, to try to say, all right, people have been designing all kinds of products for thousands of years, but sometimes they don't do a very good job. How can we do a better job? What can we learn from that? And that's how I pulled out these 9 principles and 70 lessons. Just for example, suppose you make a mistake. Okay, the user makes a mistake because maybe we didn't do a good job of designing it to prevent the mistakes, or things happen. Okay, things go wrong.
Right.
Well, a typical software developer would say, okay, I'm going to show them an error message. But instead of doing that, instead of showing an error message, why don't we write a message to inform the user of the problem and help them solve the problem? That's one of the kinds of lessons that I came up with, is craft messages both to inform the user and to help them solve the problem. And so I've collected all of that information into my book, The Thoughtless Design of Everyday Things. And that's something that, that's where you can get all of this information. And I actually have a website that goes with that, cleverly titled simply thoughtless-design.com, where I also have a lot more examples there too.
I will let the link below this video if someone just wants to click it, even easier to get there.
Sure. And they can find a lot more examples. And I'm always interested in hearing from people who want to share their examples. Many of the examples I have, there's more than 200 of them, are things that I've personally experienced, but I've got many, many from other people. And sometimes they were pretty angry when they said, look what just happened to me. Let me tell you about this, because we do find it annoying.
How can people reach you if they have some idea to share with you?
Right at the thoughtless-design.com website, there's a contact form, and I'd love to hear people's own experiences. In fact, I gave a talk about this topic just a couple of days ago, a webinar, and the next day someone sent me an example that he had found very annoying on a website. So I'm always interested in hearing those and compiling them and sharing them so we can learn from them and do better.
Certainly. And I will try to figure out some products I have around here and send you some thoughtless designs as well.
Well, that would be very interesting, because we live in different cultures and different environments. So it'd be interesting to see. I'm sure there's a lot of commonality, but you might have some unique things going on in Brazil that I haven't seen before.
You may be sure there's a lot of thoughtless designs here as well. Karl, thank you very much for coming. It was a real pleasure to have you here.
Oh, I was happy to be here. Thank you very much, Fabrizio.